Hey, how's it going?
Wahid, what up, girl?
Not much. How about you?
Chilling, chilling. Uh, just having a good day and streaming for a lot longer than I thought I was going to be today, but it's been good. I was happy to get on a little early and chat about all the FSK and Kyle and 310 stuff that's going, which is just
Yeah,
absolutely
I was gonna
wild.
say though, you must be exhausted by now. That's a lot of streaming in a day.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know me, professional talker, so it comes a little bit of the territory. All right. But you are up. And shockingly, we're going out with a bang because you are the last big event for the evening. So,
Hey, and then you can be done.
yeah, more or less. Yeah. And then literally, no, absolutely. So, right when I finish, I got to go. I have to go drive over to my mom's because my brother's visiting with my nephews and his wife. So, they live about 15 minutes. She's about 15 minutes away. So, like, literally, right when I finish here, I'll probably end up heading out. And
Oh gosh, that's a long day.
yeah, so but then I get to go play with my nephews for a little bit, so that's gonna be super fun. And I think
Oh,
they're gonna
yay.
do a little bit of dinner there, so I can kind of hang out with them until the end, and then yeah, and then when I get back, I'm just gonna try and sleep for like 25 and a half hours. So tonight.
I don't even blame you.
No, absolutely. So okay, let me make most of the time that I have with you here at the moment. So first and foremost, I appreciate you making some time for us. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as far as, again, I know our conversation is going to be a little bit different than the two I was doing previously, but let everyone know maybe how long you've been playing COD, what kingdom did you start in, maybe some of the alliances you started in with as well.
Sure. Well, to preface, by the way, I have like the worst storm going on right now. So if you hear loud thunder, that is not like an ASMR thing, that is the weather. So I'm sorry. But to start, I started in the game, gosh, right when it came out like 2 years ago. Is it God, I think it is 2 years ago. And I started with BXS. Those guys I had actually played with for, God, 10 years now. We've taken trips together. We know each other really well. So obviously, when they were telling me, "Oh, you got to come play, you got to come play," I decided, okay, let's do it. Worst mistake of my life, but here we are. From there, I ended up going to TFS, which at the time was a separate alliance that merged and became TFS. From there, I went to Echo with Sod, and now officially I am in EIS with Dark. So I'm really excited. I think every alliance has really contributed to my experience in CODs. It's really cool.
Yeah. Now, first and foremost, thank you for the intro. This is I think, our second time doing a
I don't
conversation.
know. It feels like more than that.
And again, we've chatted a couple times prior to today, but I remember we did one. I did one interview with you, and I remember you telling me at the time because I think I had asked or had made a comment or a statement about you possibly being the strongest female player in the game, and then you had mentioned to me. I recall this it was one of the lights, and I always forget which one, if it was Northern or Southern, because I know they're married or a couple, but I could never remember exactly who was the man, who was the woman. But I know you had mentioned that to me at the time when we were chatting.
Yes,
Uh,
I remember now.
yeah.
Northern is higher power.
Yes. So, and what's funny is after you told me this, I tried to reach out to them, and I've probably reached out to them maybe two or three times right in these past 2 years. But again, I don't get a response. So there's just maybe it's a language barrier,
Yeah, they're
maybe
very
it's
private. There's a bit of a language barrier.
yeah,
They're private. They're not really much for kind of that social aspect of it, which is
yeah.
totally understandable. Everyone plays for different reasons.
I get it. I mean, they hate human beings. It's okay. We don't have to sugarcoat it. So
I mean, if you're gonna be
yeah,
honest, no.
there we go. Okay, so your alliance track record. So you ended up having starting out. We went BXS, TFS, Echo, EIS. Give me before we get to kind of the maybe the some of the reasons for the move. I would love to know. Can you give me even if it's just a few things about and again for and I'm showing this on screen too as well. But again, like you're currently 247 mil. You're pretty much at peak power at the moment. Again, strong player, strong account. So you have basically been a part of what it feels like strong team after strong team after strong team, right? Always playing on top kingdoms in top groups, and being a fighter for the most part. So I'm curious if you can maybe lay out for me, maybe obviously with the exception of EIS because you just joined, but maybe for BXS, TFS, and Echo, can you give me a couple things that you really liked, that really stood out to you when you were there, and then maybe a couple opportunities that you noticed as well while you were there? If you could maybe start with BXS and then TFS Echo.
Oh, that is such a good question. That's a really hard one too. Um, BXS, I think the biggest strength was the family atmosphere.
Okay.
Everyone there was really there for each other, and it wasn't necessarily about being the top team. That wasn't really, the our overall goal. Our overall goal was just to have fun, which is a little different than a lot of alliances you see today, who are, especially Gen 1, who are still around today. The goals have kind of changed a little bit. The area of opportunity was just, when I took over as R5, it wasn't something that had been planned. It was a crazy mess, and leadership in general was a crazy mess. So I think that really the area of opportunity there would be leadership, more structure, better structure. And then TFS, TFS, it was really fun. There were some great characters there. When Jason wants to be fun, he is the most entertaining person on the planet. The negative was also Jason, though, and that he was, he was a tyrant. He was not a nice person. I remember once we were doing a behemoth, and two people had a similar name, and one of the people had messed up in the behemoth, but he couldn't tell who it was, so he kicked them both.
Oh, jeez.
Um, so it's very much stuff like that, or him calling everyone idiots, or just not a very nice person. Um, and then EIS, obviously I haven't been here long, but I think
Or
that
Echo, if you could
the
do Echo next.
or Echo,
Yeah.
thank you. Echo, I'd say, Sod is a great guy. I think that Sod had a really noble, goal for starting it. He really wanted to kind of keep that TFS family atmosphere, but eliminate kind of the abuse that was going on towards the players. So it was really nice. I'd say the thing to work on is that as time went on, it got a bit toxic. There were players that
Okay.
were doing and saying things that I wasn't okay with. And, I would talk to leadership and say, look, like, this is really upsetting to me. I think we need to address this. And things weren't being addressed. And at that point is when I left the game because, I kind of felt, okay, well, where do I go from here? I was losing interest, A, and then B, to kind of see this toxicity take over. It just wasn't the right place for me. So that's kind of the pluses and minuses.
Okay. Okay, got you. Essentially, you get to this point where you feel like, okay, I've been here now. How many seasons did you play with Echo?
Gosh, I mean, from the first season, I had left with Sod.
Okay, okay. So you were originally a part of the group. Now, at the time, obviously, if we maybe simplify it between Jason and Sod, you chose Sod to go with. You get there in 60, and as they're starting out in I guess in their rebuild, did you feel like, you know what, after you got there, you played out the first season, at that time, did you feel like, okay, hey, like they really got a good game plan here, like they're really laying down a good foundation? Did it feel like everything, at least from your perspective on what you noticed, that everything was still on the up and up? And I say that to a point of where you felt justified in your decision to go with Sod to 60.
Absolutely. That first season was like heaven. It was, because going from TFS, where and obviously you were part of this as well, where you had streamers sitting in your VC, where everything you did was being watched and streamed and videoed. And then you go to this other alliance where it's almost like season one again. There's nothing really to prove. Everyone just set out to have fun. The mentality was just, let's have fun, let's do this together, let's have that community. So I mean, I was in heaven that first season. I was really, really happy. I think I told Sod probably 100 times, thank you, so much for doing this, because it saved, my COD interest because at the time, obviously TFS, I was like, all right, well, I'm kind of getting over this, but that was great.
Okay. Very interesting that you hinted at this idea that it felt like you were almost kind of in a reality show to an extent, right? Like you're kind of on an episode
Yeah,
of
that's
Keeping
how
Up with
it
the
felt.
Kardashians, right? If everything is kind of
Yeah.
being watched or it's being monitored, because you're in that environment. And I guess in obviously to no fault of any of the creators that are doing that, obviously they're doing what they need to do. But at the same time, uh it's interesting to hear, oh, hang on. Yeah, maybe I should do that. 1 second here. Let me.
What'd you forget?
No, I forgot to update the video title. Um,
Oh, I'm
yeah,
Captain
that's
Jack. Just
right.
kidding, guys.
Yeah. Uh,
He's a good guy.
let's see
There's
here.
worse people to be mistaken for.
That's right.
I have faith in you.
That's right. I will. Let me see here.
You got this.
I got it. We can do it. There we go. Here. We'll give a little bit of the same. Um, oh wait, hang on. Here we go. Hang on. I forgot to do this. There we go. All right, fixed.
Yay!
Feels pretty spot on. To
I'm proud of you.
my first one. Thank you. I'm going to be honest. I'll take that with a high level of praise. So, okay, so we get to the situation where you're there post season one. You feel like everything is going great, and you're over the moon. You're saying you get your season one vibes back, which is such, to me at least, that is such an underwhelming statement that really speaks to the almost mental sanity and just psychological comfort that players have when it comes to how easily they can either get burnt out, or because of certain things that happen, they can just turn you off immediately to a point where it feels like, all right, maybe I'm just not really enjoying the game anymore. And you start kind of getting it into your mind of like, okay, well, do I consider quitting? I guess I'm curious for you, because again, you come from more, now you have been in management, but you also have just been I don't know if I want to say average Joe, I'll say average Jill, if you will, as a player. And so I'm curious for you, when you've been in some of these alliances, have you had moments, and regardless if you name the alliance or kingdom or not, that's okay. But I'm curious, have you had moments of where you have felt demotivated, you felt deflated? And if so, what was happening at that time that made you feel like that?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, in TFS, Jason was kicking me left and right, so that was a little demotivating. Um, I think TFS is probably the worst for so many reasons. I mean, obviously, Jason was the worst. But then when it came down to where it became this like you said, keeping up with the Kardashians. Everything you did was being streamed and watched, and everything you said and everything you would type. It just became this behemoth thing where you were just kind of sitting there, and every single thing you did was just under the microscope, and that was stressful. It wasn't like you could just log and have fun. It wasn't like you could log and do something stupid in the game because people were always watching. Um, so I think that kind of dichotomy between going from an alliance like that to going to Echo, where no one really cared, it was so
Okay.
different and so freeing. I mean, obviously now people watch Echo a lot closer, but at the time, most people thought it wasn't going to be successful. Most people figured it would fail. So it just wasn't a top topic for anyone.
Okay, that's interesting that you say that some people. So who, like, was it at least about the Echo situation of some people saying, okay, hey, listen, it's all well and good, and let's to put things into perspective. I mean, Sod basically had about half of the alliance at that time there in 23 from TFS that split. I think it was a little bit less than 50%.
Yeah.
Was there? Was it? Was the general sentiment amongst the group that left that, listen, great move, spirits are high, and was it more of, from you saying that people thought it was going to fail? Was it more of people that were still left in 23, or was it also from people that were just not a part of the group as well, as far as outsiders looking in?
It was a bit of both.
Okay.
The people who had left, all of us felt really encouraged because we knew that the people that were with us were fighters, degenerates that were going to stay up and were going to make it happen. You know, for me, it wasn't a question of whether it would happen because I knew it would. But the people who stayed thought, oh well, you know what, Jason said he's going to change. So things are going to change. Jason's going to change. He's going to be a different, better person, which throughout my entire time knowing Jason, I heard that many times and that never happened. So that wasn't very encouraging to me. And then you had the people from the outside who also looked and they said, well, Jason's this huge player. How are they going to survive without Jason? Without the realization that for pretty much the past like 2 seasons before we left, Sod had been running things. I mean, he was pretty much the R5, just not in name. So for us, it was like, okay, well, this makes perfect sense. Whereas from the outside, people might have just saw it as like a spur decision or something that there wasn't a lot of thought put into.
Okay. Okay. So this happens. You now are successfully in one season deep. When, I guess, and I'm curious, at least for your time with Echo, when did you, at what point, whether it was the second or third season, when did you first start noticing at least some things within Echo that maybe either caught you off guard or were surprising to you, things maybe you didn't expect, or just, I guess, if we even simply say, like, what were some of your icks that maybe you developed over time in there? And was it something that kind of happened right away? Was it like, ah, no, it was kind of like a small thing, it just kind of creeped in season to season?
Yeah, you know, I feel like it was something that we took in a few players, and I don't know if it was a creep necessarily, or if it was like we just took in the players and then it became problematic. But I think what started happening is that we had someone in HR. I don't know if you ever met Mommy, but she was our
Mhm.
HR person, and she started having some, you know, pretty severe health issues. She started backing away from the game a bit, and losing HR, I think, is where things started really going bad. Because what happened is then you had these players
And
come in who
just so I can interject for a second, so you could dive in. What was everything she did, just so people have a good, full understanding?
she made sure that everyone stayed in line, you know? I mean, she made sure that that the trolling or the banter stayed where it should versus kind of because you know when it's banter versus when it's toxicity, you know, when people are trying to just go to those personal attacks, which I don't like. I think has no place in these kind of games. And some people go with that though, and I think that she was really good at tempering that and making sure that um, that the players were kind of staying where they should be in terms of the lines between trolling and toxicity and everything else.
Okay. Oh, so basically, you're like Saint Teresa, so to speak, which is, I mean, to be,
No.
okay, okay. Um,
God
so
no.
more like a hall monitor, so to speak. Maybe that might be too light of an example, but to me, so it's interesting you say that because I remember from my time when I was playing Rock, and I was in 1196. We had a they had like an MHA, it was like a mental health awareness department that they basically created, and it was essentially for anyone could go there and they could go and speak to some people, right? These were usually some older individuals, but they were always there for anyone who wanted to chat, right? Like if you just wanted to vent, if you
Oh,
want,
that's really
like if
nice.
you wanted to share things with just what your experience was, or something that maybe happened, or maybe something that's really tough on you that's going on in real life, you could go to some of these people and you could just have a conversation, right? It was almost kind of like volunteer therapists, if you will. And I always thought that was like a really interesting approach, but it kind of reminds me of that a little bit of what you're saying. Obviously not exactly, but to that point, it feels like it's nice to have someone or anyone that can be there for the players, whether that is in a supportive capacity and or if that is in a, like, I'm about to keep that acid line capacity, so that way things don't get maybe too overboard. Um, and I guess I'm curious, have you been, have you ever, I guess in that case, right, from what you're saying, with Echo, because you mentioned some like some people came in that may have been toxic or may have been saying certain things that might have been perceived as offensive by you. Is it? I guess from you saying you felt like that might have been the start of when you started noticing like just some things that were kind of okay. I'm like looking a little side eyed right now with how things were going and or what I thought wasn't going to happen here. Was that a little bit of what that was as it kind of started to build up?
Yeah, I think that, what really started and when it became very apparent to me was in the season where we fought EIS,
Okay.
when it was Echo EIS. And that's kind of when I brought my concerns to leadership, was because there were a lot of personal attacks going on, people making fun of each other's looks, making fun of like, it wasn't just banter for the sake of the game. It was almost like a little bit of doxy banter,
Okay.
which I didn't care for. And that's kind of when I went to leadership and I said, look, like, I'm really not okay with this. I don't feel good about this. Which leadership pretty much just said to me, well, they're toxic too, which I didn't feel was a good enough rationale. I felt like even if there's someone on their team saying stuff, we're accountable for ourselves. We're accountable for this alliance and we're accountable for every one of our players. And I felt that, that should be reinforced more. And that was kind of the difference of opinion there was, well, if they're being toxic, then we'll be toxic.
Okay. So kind of at least for some of those people involved, if it wasn't like okay, if we can't beat them, join them. You're saying kind of of a mentality.
Exactly.
Okay. So okay, so this happens. You're saying that's kind of the first chink in the armor for you. Next season goes on, or the seasons go on afterwards. I guess was there anything prominent, anything else prominent that you felt okay? This is like either the next thing or maybe the final straw, if you will, where you said to yourself, okay, maybe it's just time for me to move on and move somewhere else, right? If they want to, if the alliances will continue, and this isn't to say that obviously the entire alliance is bad or dear God, no one should join them. But for you personally, on what was important to you to prioritize, I guess what was there anything that happened after that, or what you felt might have just been the final straw for you that made your next steps as a decision more clear?
Well, it started when I came back to the game, and I kind of came back kind of just in a yapper capacity. I
Okay.
was telling myself I'm not going to come back in the game, just going to do some yaps, talk to my friends, let it be. But then and that's the current season. And so once again, Echo versus EIS. And the toxicity they started trying to dox people in EIS. And it wasn't successful, but they were trying to make it seem like they had doxed people. They're trying to make it seem like they had information or intel on these people's personal lives. I mean, it just got to the next level. So from there, I was like, all right, this is a little crazy, but maybe it'll calm down. I thought that maybe if I was to spend more time in their Discord and kind of, spend more time with them, that things can calm down a little bit. But obviously, well, that goes into the reason that I left. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of that.
Okay. Which is interesting because man, the last time I heard about people doxing was gosh, back when I was playing Halo on my console years ago. So
No, right? Like it's been years,
yeah,
years for me in games where people have not doxed. I mean, I thought that was a thing that was done
yeah.
like 5, 10 years ago.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, that's okay. Interesting. So okay, so that happens, and then you say to yourself, okay, it's finally time for me to move on. How what were those steps? What did those steps look like for how you were going about choosing where you wanted to go next? Did you have a short list already? Did you reach out to multiple people on a long list and you filtered that down? What was your process for figuring out where you needed to move next?
Well, it was tricky because I didn't plan on leaving. I very much planned on staying, but then Saad and I got into a disagreement. And as a result of that disagreement, I decided, hey, you know what? I'm leaving. And from there, I had no plans.
Okay.
So I kind of was debating at that moment between MFD with Abda,
Okay.
and then obviously EIS was kind of always in the back of my head. But I was trying to figure out, what do I want my play style to look like? Do I want to come back full time? Because that would definitely mean EIS. Do I want to come back part-time, which would be MFD? It was really trying to make that decision between those two.
Got you. And then obviously, if you wanted just to come back in the app, you're like, I'll just join COD Discord, and then we're done with it. So
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna yap. It's gonna be fine, no problem.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So
But it's one of those things where, and leadership plays, and I feel like this has been the theme of a lot of conversations that I've had recently, is that leadership plays such a large role in the success of an alliance. I mean, we saw TFS fail after the CoR5 left. We saw BXS fail after, that the whole leadership structure fell apart. And then you have Echo, which I don't foresee failing, but I do think they're in a very tenuous situation.
okay. Okay. So you get to this point of you're now trying to figure out and decide who you are going to go with. Did you have conversations with MFD, or was it just conversations with Echo as far as who you spoke to about possibly moving, and or if there was anyone else maybe that you actually had to talk with, whether that's text or voice?
Um, well, just to clarify, because I see Dell typing, Dell was the reason that TFS was successful. When I say CoR5 left, I mean he was pushed out by Jason, and he was actually Dell or Yoda, you might know him as. He was the reason that TFS was so successful. So thank
Okay.
you. Um, just to re-clarify
I
that.
remember Yoda. I don't know if I remember Dell though. Okay.
It's his same name. He just
Okay.
went by like Dell or Yoda. So sorry, but could you repeat that question?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I'm curious on you. You get to this point where you finally need to figure out, okay, where am I going to go? And you narrow it down to somewhat of a short list. Which kingdoms and or alliances and that you actually had conversations with, whether that's text and or voice.
Yeah, it all happened so quickly. I talked a little bit with Quokka at MFD. She was kind, the whole thing was over this kind of Discord role situation, and so she kindly was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you full access to MFD's Discord. Don't worry, you can yap there." So that to me was really touching. I think that, kind of taking away that side of, "Hey, this is just a game. Like, come have fun." I thought that that was huge for me. And then EIS, Dark and I talk all the time, obviously. And I was like, I asked him, I said, what do you think about me joining EIS? Like, do you think that's a good idea? The first question. And he seemed to be like, yeah, it is a good idea. So he talked to his leadership team and they kind of came back and said, yeah, if you want to come, you can come. Um, so for me, it really kind of came down to right now, I want to be active in the game. I want to go back to kind of that season one vibes. And the right decision for me to be at that peak playing and peak activity is EIS.
Okay. Okay. Any considerations for and again, I guess based on you, it's more of so there wouldn't have been any consideration as far as for places like BTX or SSG or uh,
Well, the
RAC
tricky
or
part
as far as
is
any
I've won
others, but
the.
I guess I'm asking it's more about you felt, I guess, a little more comfortable in the maybe personal relationships you already had for people you knew. Was that a factor essentially?
That was a huge factor,
Okay.
and then I also want to make sure that it was an alliance that wouldn't ally TFS.
And oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Funny as
Well,
it
okay. Now that's a new
sounds.
element. All right. Okay.
So it like eliminated a lot of the options because I was like, okay, who will never ally TFS? And I know Dark would never, so that helped a lot too.
Okay. Got you. So still carrying the feelings with you multiple seasons later. Understood. Understood.
It will
Uh,
never end, BN. It'll never end
got you. All right. Okay.
until TFS is destroyed again.
Consistent. Oh man,
No, I'm,
because
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
gosh, honor among thieves, as they say. Okay, so you get to this. Okay, so you figure out where you're going to go. I guess I'm curious. What else? I guess what else besides that when it came to, I guess how much did you know or do you know about EIS? I guess prior to going again, knowing that relationship there with Dark, EIS still a top kingdom and a top fighting kingdom at the moment, wanting to go there because you knew they weren't going to ally with you. I guess are there any other things about the kingdom, the alliance that stood out to you that you felt okay? Hey, this is like another attractive perk, another attractive incentive to want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched Dark be a leader there, and I've watched his decision-making process, and I've watched how he's handled different issues in his alliance for, a year, obviously with a bit of a break in between. And for me, that seemed to be where I wanted to be because it was a leader who was very fair, a leader who was around since season one. So, obviously they're successful. You don't have a leader around that long if people don't like them. So for me, it really kind of came down to that, knowing that the leadership was in a good place, a stable place, and that the alliance was going to be somewhere where I can stay and grow and have a good playing experience.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So now that you're there, and you're in 176 with the group, what is your plans at the moment are okay. I'm coming back. I'm going full time. What obviously because you just migrated there, you won't be able to do anything obviously until the next season. But what is what are your expectations now that you're there? Is it something that you feel like okay, I'm reinvigorated, I'm remotivated, I'm in it, and obviously being in a new place, it almost feels like that maybe just goes without saying. But what are some of the things maybe you're looking forward to being there in 176 with the EIS, and what are some of your expectations that you have now that you're there of the alliance and the kingdom that you hope and or just expect to see next season, regardless of how this season goes?
Yeah, I think that I'm really excited, and so far I have kind of been pleasantly surprised even at the family atmosphere there. It's, constantly we're sitting in VC, hanging out, or, joking about this, playing games. It's a really fun atmosphere. You don't see I mean, I haven't seen any toxicity internally. Whenever someone has a comment or, a suggestion that they want, Dark handles it. And if Dark sees something that he sees as too toxic, he reins people in. I mean, I think that overall I'm really excited for that kind of atmosphere. And I also think, we recently had a town hall, which was interesting, my first town hall of this alliance. And it was nice to see, kind of that leadership style of, hey, here's the expectation set. I'm going to be fair, but I'm also going to, hold everyone accountable for their actions. I thought was really nice versus kind of that, hey, well, some people might get special treatment or some people are allowed to slag off and others aren't, or I'm going to throw this at you end of season. The expectations were very clear. And I think that that's something that will lead to success.
Okay. Okay. No, I mean that's pretty straightforward in detail. No, I appreciate that. I will say I like it. I've always been a fan of any time, which to me I always feel is such a big plus when you go somewhere and you land in a kingdom where the leadership team will host town halls, whether that's after a season starts, if that's before a season, if you do a mid town hall in the middle of the season. Again, I know some kingdoms that'll host them, once a week, once every 2, 3, or 4 weeks, just depending on the interval and the rates that they would like to. But giving for me, I guess I've always really appreciated the fact that when you have leadership teams that give their players, which are basically the meat, if you were, the cogs in the machine, that also keep things going in their own right, giving them that opportunity to speak and to share their thoughts on things that are going. Because again, as we know, some people some people will be more outspoken than others. Some people do
Yeah.
not mind sharing in a public forum. Other people prefer that it's done anonymously. And obviously having those options to do that, I've always felt is incredibly important and is always something that people can even just do IRL as kind of good takeaways. But so you get there, you have the town hall that happens. You, I guess at the moment, your mentality is just play. No aspirations for doing anything more than playing. At least currently, you just want to be just an additional fighter, a part of the group.
I was gonna sing like the Pokemon theme song. It kind of like popped in my head, but I
Yeah,
held back.
gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm really excited to. I think that EIS too is at a really interesting position. They have gone kind of their post their restructure, which I wasn't really around for. So for me, it's kind of new to see in the new server with different players and a stronger foundation. And I think that they're really at a point right now where they can either kind of, stay as the top lions, but, kind of just be hanging out at that level, or if they're going to go to that next, huge level. And I think that they're right on that border. Obviously, this season you saw Zone 2, which was not great. And I think that everyone in EIS acknowledged that wasn't great. But I don't think that that is indicative of the alliance itself. I think that there's a lot that can be done. I think that there's a lot we're going to see be done.
Okay. Okay. Now, you have been a part of, like we stated, multiple top competitive alliances, also being a pretty avid fighter. What, at least when it comes, and I'm curious from because again, you being there as a fighter, also being on the front line for however many of the alliances it was, I'm curious what are some things that you have seen that really stand out to you, they that make I guess that stand out to you, that make the alliances, if you were to consider them top fighting alliances, right? What I guess are there anything in slash or is there anything that you felt while you were with some of these alliances really was like either their bread and butter, or things you thought like, man, they did this really well, and this is something that others can learn from.
It's hard because there's a flip side to the coin for every argument that I can think of for each alliance.
Okay.
I will say that with TFS, the good thing they were really good at is building that community and building that family atmosphere where people kind of stuck together, where people wanted to help each other. I think that was huge. And then going into Echo, they were really good at recruiting. They were able to recruit these top fighters, but again, there's another side of the coin to that where you get some more toxicity. And then you have EIS, who actually, uniquely enough, I'd say EIS is the first top alliance that I've fought in where the R5 is not a huge spender. And that actually gives a really different perspective to things. When you have an R5 who isn't, Nephisto or isn't, Jason, you're dealing with someone who's able to say, hey, you know what? I understand that people have limited resources, so we have to make strategic decisions. We can't be just assuming everyone's going to throw out every last troop and die and do all this because, again, all of our people aren't, top spenders. So I think having that kind of mentality is really different. And I've been really interested in that. I'm interested to see that play out more.
That's interesting you say that. So you feel, in another way of saying that, that an R5 who isn't a heavy spender, maybe even arguably a mid-high spender, has a little bit more of a down to earth or a relatable connection to maybe more of the average players that are in their alliance, where their approach and perspective on how they treat certain situations are maybe more in line with the average player power versus maybe the top 1% or the top 0.1%. Is that, I guess, is that fair to say?
Yeah, and in our last interview we did, I remember we spoke about this a little bit where, and you kind of found this as an interesting perspective. But to me, that 100 to 150 mil player is the bread and butter for an alliance. You can have the top spenders, you can have 10 top spenders, you can have five top spenders, but wars come down to those 150 mil bodies that are on that field fighting. And I think when you have an R5 who is able to recognize that and realize the limits of these players, they're able to tailor their strategies more towards what they understand people's abilities to be and what they understand is feasible and what's not feasible. And I think that gives a very interesting perspective to things and one that, I haven't experienced before.
Okay. Well, if anything, I guess for you, more of a reason to enjoy the new home in that case.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you know me with my resources.
Touche. Sometimes all too well. Okay. So, okay. So you get there, you again feeling the sense of renewed, reinvigorated energy, feeling like, hey, I'm a kid again at the candy store. I get my free pick of my devil's pleasure, depending on how the Christians say it. Who knows? So you're now looking at, with EIS going forward. Is there and I guess I'm curious because, and so I guess this is somewhat EIS related, but being in multiple top alliances and top kingdoms, again, you get to EIS, they've been around for a pretty long time. All the alliances you've been in have I mean, they're all pretty much, at least for the ones you named, I mean, they're all intact. It's not as though any of them have, for lack of better words, died off, right? At least at the moment, currently, right? With the exception of maybe the TFS rebuild. But none of the other ones have pretty much had to go through that, right? If you look at the four you name with BXS, TFS, Echo, EIS, only one of them, being TFS, has had to do a rebuild. So and I'm curious, for you as the player, what are some things that, and again, it's not like you only played in some of these kingdoms or some of these alliances for one season at a time. You've played in these for multiple seasons and moved on, where you're not just kind of hopping each season. And I imagine also because it could probably just get expensive. So, but I'm curious on what what are some things that, and I'm talking about for your perspective, for your personality, for what you prioritize. What are some things that you think, as when you're in a kingdom with these, playing with these top alliances, what are some things that you feel like, give me one or two things that are just deal breakers to you, that you feel like, okay, this is just an immediate red flag? And then what are some things that are like, okay, no, the fact that they're doing this, and it doesn't really even have to be the most standard thing. It could be something that is just important to you. And then what are some things where you're like, man, this is great. I'm in the right place and I just don't see myself leaving.
That's a great question. I feel like the biggest thing for me is having leadership who are very hands-on, leadership that are going to address things right away as things happen versus
Okay.
letting, something continue or sitting there and being stagnant. That's a huge green flag for me. A huge red flag is any kind of leadership that you see that's kind of taking out losses on their players. At the end of the day, when you're a leader, every single thing that happens in that game, in that in that alliance, falls back on you.
Mhm.
If a zone has failed, it's your failure at the end of the day. And leaders who are able to acknowledge that, huge green flags. Leaders who just go to their players and say, "Well, you all suck, so we lost." That's huge red flag for me. And then the huge thing that obviously I think from our discussion that is just, game over for me is any kind of toxicity. And what I mean by toxicity is I don't mean, everyone making your mom jokes in world chat because that's just part of the game. But I mean doxing people or attempting to dox people, I should rather say, or going through this where like you're making like personal comments to people, making fun of people's looks or something. I don't think it's necessary. I really don't.
Okay. No, I mean, that's fair. Well, I'm curious. What do you think about? And because I've always had this, and I think we talked about this last time. What are do you often talk with a lot of other, I guess, female players, and if they're around your power or not? And I say this because to me it just feels like maybe the female community in COD isn't, I guess, maybe isn't that big or that large per se. And I guess if so, and or because of that, do you feel like it's a little bit more of a tight knit group where so I guess I'm just curious on that. Do you often talk with other, like, either female players, whether they're in the same alliance or in a different alliance? Does it just not matter if they're in a different alliance? It's just like, okay, hey, listen, this is just nice to see that there's another girl playing this game.
You know what? I'd actually say that this game is probably the best I've played when it comes to female representation. Most of the games I've played is either girls that are playing these games for the wrong reasons or a very small amount. Whereas this game in particular, I think that the women are very strong. I think you have some great players that, care about the game, that enjoy playing the game, enjoy the community. And then obviously there's some others, but I've tried to bring that group together. I have a girls Discord chat. I know that EIS has a girls chat as well. So there is attempts there to kind of bring that together and to make sure that that community is there. I think it kind of fails sometimes, but I do think that this game in particular has really kind of had that community that other games lacked.
Okay. And you have been playing these kinds of games for a while. I remember you used to have a a picture on your gallery for, I can't remember if it was for Game of War or something. I remember I
Yeah.
asked you about this before because I found this article you did an interview for. And I remember at the time when we had talked the first time, I asked you about it. So again, you've been around these games. It's not like COD is your first rodeo. You've been in the space and have been playing games in the genre for a pretty long time. Let me backtrack a little bit. What are some things that what are some things like you really like about, give me like one or two, maybe two or three things you really like about COD in its current state, and what are some things that you just wish they would change, they remove, they would add on?
I think that the community is probably my favorite part.
Okay.
There's been in every alliance that I'm in, I love 80, 90% of players. The people in this game are just, they're very special. I think that unlike any other kingdom builders that I've played, and I've played a
As in they
lot,
need helmets?
um, I wasn't gonna say it like that, but no. I think that people are really caring. They're really good at, building that kind of fun atmosphere, which I don't think, all kingdom builders have that to a degree. But I think this game in particular, people stay around for a long time and those relationships are really deep. Um, uh, but overall, I just think that this game is just it's very different in that sense, and I think that it's a good thing. Some games you kind of play with people, you're like, oh, these guys, aren't my favorite. But every alliance I've been in, it's been great.
Okay. And what about some things right now in the current state of the game that you just don't like, or things that you wish they would change, or they would improve, or they would switch something up?
I wish they'd be a little kinder to the free to play. I think that what tends to happen in these games is there's a point where the company just kind of says, you know what, we're done. We're just going to let it run without any huge improvements or huge changes that are good for the community as a whole. And they start only making changes that are good for whales. And when that tide turns and it switches fully there, that's when the downfall of the game begins to happen. And I don't think we're there yet, but I do see a lot of things that kind of get pushed that are very for pay to win versus free to play. So I do wish there were more opportunities for those, 100 mil players and below to be able to participate in more events and do different things that aren't just pay to win.
Okay. Okay, fair. How about the current KVK state right now of the game? What are give me one or two things that you like about the current KVK state, and then one or two things that you just think, okay, this needs to change, we need to switch something up, or maybe they can add something.
Well, this might be controversial, but I actually really like that it's a lot shorter. I think the shorter time frame makes it a lot more exciting. You're able to just run from zone to zone, and so I really enjoy the length of them. In terms of what I'd change, I should preface that by saying, I was out of the game for 3, 4 months, so I don't think I'm probably the right person, and I don't want to say something that is going to have 20 people say, no, don't change that. So I'll withdraw from that question, but I will say that I
Okay.
like the length of the KVKs.
Okay. Okay. Now, for obviously for your power level, you're someone that does spend on the game. Do you do you feel that, and this is something that I always find interesting because people will talk about things like catch up mechanics, right? When you're just starting out, and or if you, even if you've been playing for a while, like for example, I ended up covering a situation. What was it? It was when I talked about the some of the free to play world records. And obviously spending's a little bit different because you're essentially able just to accelerate everything at more or less your own pace, depending on budget. But I recently covered and I talked about how some there's only been a handful of players at the moment that have been able to get max T5, right, or all, or just unlock all. And some of those login dates, shortest one being 580. You might remember Ragnar in TFS,
Yeah.
Snowman, or I should say First Avenger, who did it in 649 days. Snowman, who was in Noir, now is leading hyphen FU. He did it in 678 days. Now, to put things into perspective, these are players that were more or less playing in top alliances, right? High spending, mid spending alliances where they were really able to help accelerate that time that they were able to get there. I'm curious for you on just your take, even though again you're not free to play at the moment. Do you and this is and again this might be something of a hottish perspective, but I have always felt that this would be something where I like this idea of all the players being able to unlock all their T5s and get to max buildings, max tech, to me, all in under a year. And I say this because there's still so many other elements. There's still so many other things you have to work on for your account. But I treat this, I don't know if you ever played World of Warcraft, but I kind of treat this,
I did.
okay, see, and I've used this example before where I talk about how, one of the things I've always was told when my friends would try to get me to play WoW was, okay, you just need to make your account, grind, get to max level or whatever the end kind of end game-ish point is, and then more things will get unlocked. You'll be able to start enjoying the game more, right? But you got to get to max level or closer to the end, and so like get through all the main story, etc. And to me, I kind of look at kingdom builders in this way, where you most of the enjoyment to me and from people that I've spoken to, they feel like, well, I have a lot more enjoyment out of the game when I have all my T5s unlocked, when I'm at max building level, when I have max tech, and then I can kind of start working on and prioritizing my resources, my investment, my time into these other elements because it kind of gets them closer to that end game state where they feel like and I say this because I felt the same way when I participated in the global versus China exhibition event. And I was able to basically get my hands on like a couple hundred mil account that they had set up for us. And it was incredibly enjoyable. Like that's the kind of state I wish I could get my account to a lot faster because to me that was so much more enjoyable. And this isn't to say that the grind isn't enjoyable, but it's to say that grinding is one there's almost like a bit, and again this might be hard for some people to understand, but for me it always feels like there's a big difference between grinding the game from a new account to you feeling like I need to get my account in a state where I will now feel comfortable and confident to actually go out there and fight and lose troops. And to me, and again, this might just be my own selfish perspective, but I have always felt that it's like I would rather go and do those things once. Like if I could choose and have my own preference, I would rather do those things once my account at least was, like I said, max building, max tech, and I had all T5s unlocked, right? Regardless if I had anything else maxed out and I was just working on everything else as such, but at least having that, because then I would feel like I'm at more of a point of, okay, I have less to work on now. And now I feel like I can personally contribute a lot more just from being at that state. And that's not to say that like I wouldn't do any fighting or any levels of contribution prior to. Again, that's kind of a long-winded way of me saying that. And again, maybe I lost you. I'm curious on your thoughts there when it comes to being able to get to a certain state faster. If the WoW comparison does anything for you.
You know what? It's a tricky, very tricky question because you're trying to balance a lot of things when you create these games. And one of those things is you need to balance the pay to win versus the pay. So if you have it where it's too easy for the free to plays to catch up, then the people who are paying don't see a reason to, dump all that money.
Okay.
And there's also kind of the psychology of it where you need to get people to that addiction. And that addiction begins when you don't know, because, the community aspect and your friendships aren't there in the beginning. So you need them to develop. To make sure that addiction goes into full force and to get that development of the community, you need people who have to log in, who have to redo their research, who have to sit there and farm, and who have to, do all these build things that the account needs. So, in my heart, I want to say yes. I think it should be much shorter, but logically, I don't know the exact time that you need for that addiction to take hold. Because obviously that's what they're banking on, right? With any of these games, they want to get you so addicted that you can't stop because you then develop that community and that community relies on you and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think that's a really tough one. I really don't know what the best solution would be.
Okay. No, listen. That's fair. Again preface with I understood it's a little bit of a loaded question. Those are just some of the topical pieces that float around my Jimmy Neutron brain upstairs that I always
I
find.
like it.
I those are things I think about often because for me, I guess one of the things I really love is being able to. I don't know if I'd call it a thought experiment, but basically just trying to think about how to better the game holistically where it's not maybe just necessarily focusing on one area or another, but how can we look to aim to increase the day-to-day enjoyment and the playing experience of the largest group or a large group as an example. But anyways, let me segue here a little bit. So and now at the moment as well, I'm going to open up questions for Wahid. So if anyone has a question for Wahid that you would like to ask, please go ahead, type it in chat, and then I can read it, and we'll see if she's able to. While we're waiting for those to come in, uh, there. Okay, so there was a mention. Obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. To be fair, someone had mentioned something about saying, and again, if it's farce or not, you can let me know. But someone had said something about one of the reasons that you had left Echo or something was over a Discord role. If I have that right.
Yes.
Okay. Long story, short story about it. Okay, what is it?
Okay, so uh, at some point, when I was gone, the Discord role, that they always purge Discords
Yeah.
and everything and redo roles as people come and go. Totally fine. And I had a guest role. When I came back to the game, I was like, I want to go back and talk to my family. I want to be in that Discord. Our public Discord just wasn't a thing. So I really wanted to get back into it. And I had messaged Sod, and this is kind of where our disagreement came into play, is that I said, well, you know what, I'd like to have, the family role, the member role. And he said, no, you're a guest. And I said, well, I don't feel like I'm a guest, considering I've been here with you from day one. Um, I've helped the Alliance so much. And then the biggest point being that my 245 million account is in your alliance. So, but he said, no, you're a guest. And I said, okay, well, if I'm a guest, then my account's going to be a guest. And then I pulled it out. So that was really what happened with the Discord role. It was a principle thing. It
Okay.
was, a trust and being valued thing. And I felt that neither of those things were at play. So I pulled out.
Okay. Literally and figuratively. Understood. So we have so you felt like it was more of a I should be grandfathered in kind of an approach.
Yeah, and you know what? When I had, and it's been done in the past. Like I don't remember if I'm sure you remember Rusty, the old mod.
Yeah.
He was in Echo's Discord forever
My
after he
boy.
quit. Yeah, I mean he was there forever. And then EIS, I was talking to Dark about this when I was thinking about it all. And he said, yeah, like we let people who left the game have member roles all the time. Because I was wondering, I'm like, am I overreacting over this? Like, is this a thing? He's like, no, no, like we do the same thing here. So I just felt that it wasn't, appropriate.
Okay. Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, so I got some questions coming in. First one, well, first one we did answer, which was someone asked why EIS. Okay, hang on. Lad asked your favorite march and why.
My favorite what?
Your favorite march, favorite legion,
Oh,
favorite comp to run, and why.
anything infantry. I love infantry. I think that it's such an underutilized march on the field. I think everyone loves to get their merits, which I get. They want to do their kills, but I love going out there and just spamming 5 march infantry because everyone hates it. So I
Okay.
like to be as annoying as possible.
Okay, it's fair enough. Very direct, very honest. Thank you for your candor. We appreciate.
You're welcome.
Uh,
Always with you.
okay, so okay, here we go. So Delarin asks, okay, so I guess a short list here. Okay, who's the better leader? Jason, Sod, Kane, Kong, or Yoda?
Well, I have to say Kane because I've played with him for 10 years. We took a vacation together to
Okay,
Dubai.
okay,
Um, But out
Oh,
of the
is
other
that oh,
ones,
is that friend, hubby, boyfriend?
BXS.
Oh, from
What's that?
BXS. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Kane's from
Sorry, no, I
BXS.
said
I
like
played with him
hubby,
for ages.
boyfriend, friend. Okay, got you.
No, 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 no. I know him and his wife really well.
Oh, sweet. Okay, nice.
But aside from that, I would definitely say Yoda. I think that Yoda was really good about keeping Jason in line. And I was in group chats with them. It was Yoda, Jason, and then me. And Yoda would be like, log off right now. You can't talk to a player like that. So he kind of kept that check and balance there. And I think that was really, really good. And that's kind of what kept Jason bringing the fun. And then, the less of that emotional coming from Yoda.
Okay. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay, let me see what else we got. Uh Let me see. For Alpha, my boy Alpha Deer says, Infameins rise up." Lovely.
This is our moment.
That's right. Protix says Dubai vacation is crazy. I can only imagine.
It was so fun. We actually had a bunch of us get together from another kingdom builder, and we all went and partied, and it was really
Oh
cool.
man, listen, gosh, just you talking about that. They you know they just did that announcement about doing the fireside gatherings for COD, where
Oh
like
yeah, I heard about that.
if anyone wants to, like if anybody wanted to host an event or a meetup for COD, they could do it, and then the team provide would provide some, I think, like swag or gift codes or things like
We should
that.
do one.
Man, I know.
Let's do it. Let's
I
do it. We'll do a BN Wahid gathering.
yeah. Listen, man, and that's the thing. I feel like that's the thing. I would be the first to sign up. And man, I could tell you, I would absolutely love to host something like that. It's just part of me feels like I wish I was a little bit bigger and I was making a little bit more. So like budget wise, it would just make it easier, make more sense for me to do something like that. But listen, if it was something I could get it together with other people, even if like Guns and Princess or anyone else, right, wanted to get involved and do that. Listen, absolutely. I mean, for me, I have, I got family on the West Coast and the East Coast, so whether it's anywhere really, but something like that, um, if there was an opportunity, I would absolutely jump on that. It sucks though. The one thing I will say is that it does feel like it's a little bit of a slap in the face because they did the gatherings. They've already done one, I think one or two so far, but now it's like, oh yeah, we'll just not host them ourselves anymore, and then we're just going to let the community people host them, right? I imagine it probably saves a little bit on manpower and money on their end for doing all those things, but like that to me is the only little letdown. But aside from that, if there was an opportunity to do one in a major city or major market, I absolutely would love to do something like that. That's one of the things I talk about where it's like, man, if I was like a Chisgul sized person for the amount he probably makes, like I would love to put something on like that where we could get a bunch of people to come out and just have it be a fun time. Like do fun events, maybe do like some panels and some seminar, some AMAs, maybe have some guest speakers. Kind of like if I was going to organize it, I would do it proper. Like it's funny
Yeah.
because I've thought about this a lot on if I was going to do it, how would I organize doing a meetup with, going to a major market that we can get the most amount of people to come out to, and it's like, dude, I would do like I'd do like a cosplay contest. We would do trivia, like do COD trivia and give away stuff. We would do, like I said, some seminars or like some panels with, like for example, I would want to do something where it's like, dude, let me find the best cav player, let me find the best infantry player, let me find some leaders, right? And we can get really good conversations where it's like leaders can talk about their experience leading, managing. Players can talk, like you can have players talk about like we can do panels and have like some of the best PvP fighters come out and talk about things like tips and tricks, best practices, do
That'd
it,
be cool.
like really make it a proper event. Like I'm telling you, man, like I've thought about this so much in my head. It's just, yeah, I'd love to kind of be able to get some. Okay, so I'm not burning the midnight oil with you too much here on time. Let me see. Mr. Get Done asked, how many cheese puffs would you order if you were to order some?
Oh
Okay.
my God. This is an inside thing.
Oh, it is? Okay. I was gonna say it's oddly specific.
Yeah, just someone's very curious about that. No,
Yeah.
what had happened is
What had happened
I
was,
Dark was sick or something. I don't
yeah.
remember, but I'd sent him some soup, and by accident,
Hold up,
Amazon
hold up, hold
had.
up. You sent him some soup? Damn, that's just that deserves some kind vibes right there. Okay, continue.
Oh, no, no. Then I was like really craving cheese puffs, and there's this barrel of cheese puffs on Amazon,
Yeah.
and I was so excited for this, right? So I put in the order. I'm like waiting for my cheese puffs, and then I'm like, oh, this is weird. I thought they'd come by now.
What kind of
So then
cheese
I
puffs
check
are
on.
these? These aren't like the cheese puffs I can get at the store in like in like the barrel, and it's like the small little like.
Yeah, it's not small. It's not small, but it's a barrel of cheese puffs.
Okay, okay, got it. Okay,
And
got
it
it.
was so embarrassing. I was so embarrassed because what I did is I realized they didn't arrive to me because they went to him because his address was saved. So I
Oh,
had to message him, and I was so embarrassed because it makes me look so fat, right? So I
not the
messaged him, and I'm
fattest.
like, "Oh my God," I'm like, "Something is coming to you, and it's so bad." And he mentioned some like inappropriate things, and I said, "No, it's worse than that, worse than that, worse than that." And he's like, "What is it?" And I'm like, a barrel of cheese puffs. So, so he has his barrel of cheese puffs. Don't worry though, I now have mine as well. So all's well that ends well.
There you go. Right, you should have asked him to just to reship it to you and like put it back in the mail. That would have been hilarious.
I thought about it, but then he had said he ate some already.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. It's like, man, free food just showing up on the door. I get it. Um, okay, I got another question for you here. And again, if you're just joining us now, right, we're still interviewing Wahid, but coming to a close here shortly. If you got a question you'd like to ask, throw it in the chat. So Masab asks, or Gilgamesh asks, EIS versus Echo. How do you feel about fighting ex comrades? And obviously, you won't necessarily do that this season, but if you were to get matched up again, is it just not something that bothers that you feel anything about, or is it like because I've talked to some people and they say like I can't wait to tear those effers faces off. What side of the fence you land on there?
Um, well, hi Gilgamesh, because I remember you very well. Love him. Um, it's one of those things where for me, I'm able to separate so much what's a game and what's real life. So for me, I just see it as, hey, we're all playing a game here. We're all playing to have fun. If it's fun being over there, great. If it's fun being over in the other spot, then great. I don't see it anything personal. I really don't. Everyone's entitled to their own feelings on that, but for me, I don't. I just see it as playing the game.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Okay, let's see. Mr. Get Done says hashtag cheese puffs party. Okay, sounds good.
God.
Order myself some
I'm
too.
never gonna live now. I'm never gonna live this down. Like I thought I wasn't gonna live it down before. Now it's even worse.
Oh man. Gosh, that's a good story. Okay, let me before we finish off. Now that you
Yeah.
have me on this story time moment, any other great stories, something like that, or whether it's from your time there in that Kingdom or Alliance or something else. Any good stories that come to mind, or one that you find is super memorable that you could share.
Ugh, I don't know. I feel like so many things happen on just a daily basis of like weird things. I don't know if I just have one. I'm on the spot now. I can't think of any.
Yeah, no, that's what happened. Yeah, we put it on,
It
brain jumbles
is.
up. It's understood. Okay. How about how about this? If do you have a wish list of things that you and okay, this might be a good question to end on. Like sometimes I feel like I outdo myself. But let me ask you, because you've played a number of kingdom builders leading up to COD, is there anything that you found incredibly enjoyable, something you loved that was in another kingdom builder that you have said to yourself, man, I wish they added this into COD? Whether it's like one, two, three things, anything that you've played somewhere else and you're like, man, this event was great. The way they set this up was great. I wish they would add this into COD.
I really liked there being an emperor system in Game of War.
Okay,
I
explain.
liked how they had an emperor. So there you essentially had this battle, and it would be much like a KVK, but it would be in a period of 3 days. So you'd have 72 hours to win. And if I was to compare it, it would be 72 hours to get to the dragon and take it.
Oh, okay.
And whoever won. And that what it was alliances from all different kingdoms came together to battle other kingdoms. So almost like global allies, but a little different. But you'd have this whole group, and then the winner, the king of, the whoever the king was that was kind of on top of all those alliances, that would become the emperor. And then the emperor would have like special powers, like he could give bad titles to people and
Okay.
like good titles, what have you. But I thought that gave a really interesting ability within the game to kind of build friendships and build even enemies and stuff with people from outside of your kingdom where you interact with them a lot more. This was something that happened like it wasn't every month. I can't remember it now. Maybe every 3 months. But it was a really huge part in the game, and it was huge for the company. I mean, people would drop $1 million on that. It wasn't cheap.
Jeez. This is interesting that you say that, where what you have basically explained is kind of the opposite way that a number of kingdom builders now run their KVKs. And I say that because what you just described is basically where it's all gas, no brakes. There's always something happening because of such a short duration within the KVK. So everyone either feels fulfilled or they feel like they have so much more to give, versus what you have now, which is it either feels like, I was cut short by a lot and I can't give anymore because we were cut short, or you get a feeling for some of them with being fulfilled. But essentially, a lot of it you could say is that even though they reduced the days for the KVK seasons now to 40, it's just you can argue in a number of the KVKs, because they're not fighting 24/7 for the entire time, where there's going to be some delays or sitting around and waiting for something to happen. You're kind of talking about being in a KVK where it is so short that you really only have enough time to basically, I mean, not to say you only have enough time, but you're basically able to fight 24/7 nonstop. It's very interesting that you say that, because I don't know, it feels like it opens up like a whole new avenue of just a different approach to where it's nonstop fighting versus breaks, fighting, breaks, fighting, breaks, fighting, which is kind of what it feels like here.
Yeah, and I love that whole entire like let's go and just don't sleep for 72 hours and when it's on that short timetable, I think it's people even more hyped, right? Because they're able to say, "Hey, for this period of time I know I'm going to be nonstop fighting," versus like let's see what happens when we get to this zone and then dip low for this zone, and it's a little convoluted.
Yeah. No, it's just no, it's fascinating. And it just, I don't know, kind of feel like I'm Aladdin and Jasmine on the carpet right now. Just a whole new world's opening up in my brain. Uh,
Oh no, what
yeah.
have I begun?
No, it's great. Like this is one of the reasons I love talking to people that have played other kingdom builders, because and asking these types of questions, because it really allows for us to have a little bit more of what I feel is a relevant conversation on either the state of the game that we're playing currently, and or what are some ideas that we just haven't thought of. And sometimes you can find, I think, some really great things. I mean, just like what you said there, I mean, that really makes me think a lot more about just a different way of approaching the game, to a point of where, like, I almost wonder, like, if they even tested that out for a season, would some people like that?
Oh, I think they'd love it.
Yeah.
Knowing the personalities of people in this game, I think they'd love it.
Well, okay. So let me get to the last few couple questions, and then again, we will leave you to it. So someone had asked about this. What do you? Oh, here we go. Okay. So Jets asked, what do you think the COD team needs to add that would really drive new players to start and stay playing COD?
Oh, that is such a good question. I don't know, because I mean, this game has really followed the steps of any other kingdom builder to a T. Everyone starts the same way. Everyone kind of goes through that same process of the researching, and then you get to your T4s, the researching gets to your T5s. I don't know. I think that's a good question. I think that's a good question for the developers to ask themselves as well as they try and recruit more and more players.
Gotcha. So are you team I love the ads they run, or team I'm not a super big fan of the ads they run?
Every kingdom builder does this.
Yeah.
The ads have nothing to do with the game. It is like they outsource it to an ad agency, and ad
Yeah.
agency doesn't even open the game. They just play it in the most interesting thing they can think of. They just throw on there, or what they think is going to attract certain personalities. So you know, I'm not a fan, but it's just one of those necessary evils, I think, in this sphere of gaming.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's that might be a decentish one. Okay, hang on. Mr. Get Done asked, why are penguins your favorite?
You know what? They've been my favorite since I was like in kindergarten. I was in the penguin class. So the classes were broken up by animals. I was in the
Oh, as
penguin
in they were
class
themed.
and
Okay.
so, you know, there was the penguin class, which I was in, and I really liked the penguins. And so I've been obsessed with penguins ever since kindergarten. And people just tend to lock onto the penguins. So I love it. You know, it's my favorite thing when I see the penguins everywhere.
That's awesome. So do you have penguin items, memorabilia in the house, in the room? You got like some penguins bobbleheads.
Well, the worst thing is that so guys that I date, they'll give me penguins, you know, it's gifts.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
what do you do when you break up and it's like this like bad breakup? You have to, but because I'm not going to throw away the penguin, obviously. You can't give away stuffed animals anymore.
Yeah.
So I have this I have these tote boxes that are filled with penguins from like X situations. So you know, if anyone ever thinks of what to do with those penguins, please let me know
Yeah.
because I can't throw them
I
away.
mean, there's goodwill. Maybe
No, they won't take stuffed animals. They won't
Oh
take
yeah,
used
you're
stuffed
right.
animals.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, if you got a friend, or if you have any friends that have kids, as long as you wash it,
Yeah,
or
I guess if I just dump a
coworkers that
whole
have
thing of
kids, yeah,
penguins.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, listen, I mean, people might think what they will about you, but listen, never, don't fret. I think you're a good egg. Okay,
Oh,
so all right, last one I got for you then, and then we'll leave you to it. So, let me see. Yerkerbert asks, who should EIS recruit next?
oh, easy question. Dragon sister.
Okay. Uh,
She's just the sweetest person. She's actually a really good row lead. She loves penguins. She's penguinized everyone. She's my favorite.
is she the one? Is she the one that makes who makes all the penguin memes or images that I always see floating
That's
around?
her.
Okay,
Yeah, that's her.
yeah, some of those are really good, and
I
I love
know.
how it feels like there's diversity where it's like, okay, it's like a different thing we could use for a totally different situation. Like she must just be in there working like just a yeah, she must be putting in some serious work on that stuff because
She
yeah.
does.
Okay.
So I would love her to be an EIS.
Okay. All right. Well, there's your answer. Listen, okay, let me go ahead and round this out. Wahid, you let me know uh, shout out, declaration, shot fired you wanna put out there before we close it out.
Um, Gosh, I'd say I'm really excited for EIS. I think that everyone there has been so welcoming. I'm really excited to kind of get to be in that team and kind of integral part of that team. And I'm really excited to see what next season brings. I'm excited to be able to fight. I'm excited to penguinize EIS, you know, one day at a time. But yeah.
All right. Penguin eyes, man, you're just you are assimilated. They got you into that penguin cult. Like Happy Feet has nothing on you.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, none.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Wahid, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me. I know it is a little bit late, our time, but nonetheless, thanks for making some time for me. Great conversation as always, and obviously wish you the best in AIS.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye.